You may remember about a month ago in the People of the Dragon dev stream that Dennis Duthet mentioned that Funcom is currently working towards update 3.0 and said that it would likely be the biggest update that Conan Exiles has ever seen. This comment came at the end of a fairly long live stream, and whilst it has definitely generated some excitement, I think the comment definitely got lost a little bit in the excitement surrounding the Numidian DLC. So, seeing as People of the Dragon has been out for a little bit now, seems like a good time to hypothesise on exactly what Update 3.0 could contain. Probably the most obvious one is Sorcery. From what I've managed to find online, Conan Exiles was originally supposed to have Sorcery at launch, though it was eventually cut from the game. However, Dennis Duthet mentioned in an AMA a while ago that Sorcery and Magic was still something the devs were interested in doing at some point in the future. Conan Exiles is, in my opinion anyway, the perfect platform for Sorcery. All of the lore and backstory is already present both in the game and in the derivative material to allow Magic to reasonably exist within the universe. Of course, there are already a few different mods for PC that add Sorcery to the game in different forms, and mostly allowing you to throw fireballs and cast lightning. If Sorcery was officially added to the game though, there are many different forms it could take. The most obvious would of course be the aforementioned combat spells, adding an alternative option to ranged gameplay that doesn't involve a bow and arrow. However, Magic could also be used as a huge gameplay augmentation for all of the content that already exists, whether you're playing alone or in a group. Magic could allow you to cast buffs on teammates, debuffs on enemies, or heal your friends, mimicking some of the utility that bow and arrow gameplay can offer. Magic is probably the most likely result of Update 3.0 in my opinion, but there are still a few more options on the table. Something else Update 3.0 could bring is console mods. This one could come in two forms, one being heavily dependent upon platform, and the other requiring some extra money and work on behalf of Funcom. If you remember the Fallout 4 debacle over console mods way back when, it took a good while for that to get settled, but in the end, PS4 and Xbox One both received mods for the consoles. However, Sony did not want to allow any custom code to access the game on their platform, so therefore PlayStation mods were restricted to only using assets and systems that already existed within the game, whereas Xbox had a bit more flexibility. This would be a huge detriment. It would rule out a large number of mods like Northern Timber, Age of Calamitous, Emberlight, etc. on PS4, or in this case PS5. It's a route that Funcom could go down, but I don't think it's ideal for anyone involved. The second method is probably much more attractive for the players, though it will have some slight downsides for Funcom. Rather than restricting which mods can be on console, Funcom could instead pay mod creators to augment and use their work on console and natively on PC, allowing some of the best mods like Pippi, less building placement restrictions, and HostSav's UI to be a toggleable option on the server side of the game. This would definitely breathe some extra life into the unofficial server communities on console, and it would be a pretty good choice for the player base. However, having to pay money to mod developers would probably put Funcom off of this idea, as they've already proven that they can create things that mimic what mods can offer. I don't particularly think we're going to be seeing console mods anytime soon. It would be very nice to, but I think it's something to keep in mind as a possibility. When I heard Duthet say that Update 3.0 was the biggest update Conan Exiles would have received to date, my immediate thought was a new map. Personally, I'm not a fan of this idea. I think many players weren't thrilled with the massive content drought that preceded the release of the Isle of Siptar, and I definitely don't think any of us want to go through that yet again. On the optimistic side, maybe Funcom have learned their lesson, and are slowly working on a new map whilst also putting out DLC and updates. To me it would seem a bit strange having two new maps release so soon. That's assuming that of course the Update 3.0 would release within, say, a year or less. I would personally much rather see the Isle of Siptar and the Exiled Lands updated and built up to offer a more fulfilling experience from the moment you spawn, to the moment you hit max level, to the moment you finish that really hard dungeon. Failing that, they could also officially adopt the Savage Wilds map, which is probably one of the best modded maps on the workshop, definitely a fan favourite amongst roleplay communities. I've played the map a little bit and I've built a couple of things on it. I haven't really explored that much, but it is a very well made map, very nice. Failing that, I could also see some new modes coming to the game in the form of new or repurposed servers. I've mentioned before that Ark has small tribe servers that wipe every 30 days or so, I believe, creating an interesting dynamic where each wipe creates a new power structure that is never really going to be set in stone given how frequently the wipes happen. I also think that a regular wipe experience like this is much less disheartening for the slightly inexperienced Conan player. If you hop onto an official server that's been running for 1,000 or 2,000 days, everywhere's built up, people have dominated the landscape, you can't really get your foot in anywhere. However, if you hop onto a small clan server and you can manage to build a base, but it does get raided, well, the wipe might happen in, say, 15 days. You can come back and you can start again. I think small clan servers could be pretty fun on Conan, as could servers with boosted gather rates, faction wars, or other modifiers. There are really plenty of options that are only limited by Funcom's imagination and funds, should they choose to go down this route. Another thing we could see in Update 3.0 would be crossplay. I don't really think it would constitute Conan's biggest update on its own. It might be packaged with something else, preferably something on this list, but it's something that would be, in my opinion, reasonably healthy for the game. Many of Conan's official servers are extremely low population, with maybe only 2 or 3 people playing regularly. Personally, I think that's just the way the game has gone. Some people prefer playing alone, some people prefer playing privately with 2 or 3 friends on their own server, and some people will prefer playing on modded or unmodded unofficial servers, but having a much larger overall player base to populate these servers could work quite nicely for helping people to have a proper official server experience, and just building a general feel of community cohesion. I'm not usually a massive fan of crossplay in most games, especially shooters, but I think that Conan is one of the games that could actually work decently with crossplay, and would provide a more interesting and populated gameplay experience for players on both PC and on console. Finally, and probably the one I'm hoping for the most, is some true endgame content. Currently, after you've hit max level in Conan, there are a few activities you can do that are appropriate for your level, though in my opinion, not enough. There are a few decent challenges, such as the Arena Champion, but the main endgame of Conan is more geared towards PvP, leaving PvE and PvEC servers in a weird place, where the endgame content feels quite sparse, as you can quite easily cut down dungeon and world bosses, especially in a group. If true endgame content was added to Conan Exiles, I'd want to see massive dungeons filled with mobs, a couple of weaker bosses, and one final, very hard boss, requiring mastery of in-game combat mechanics and movement, whilst also learning phases and boss mechanics on the fly. Maybe it's a little bit of masochism, but I'd want this content to be extremely difficult, maybe to the point where thrall entry is partially or fully restricted, forcing players to prepare properly, and not rely on the insane DPS that some thralls can output. As for the rewards from these raids, that's the tough part really. It could be a new set of degradable, non-repairable weapon or armours, encouraging players to keep going back to these dungeons. The difficulty, mechanics, or regular mobs within the dungeon could even change weekly, adding more variety and reducing the ability to just constantly farm raid rewards. They could also contain recipes for powerful consumable items, or it could even be a place to include the new best in slot weapon for Sorcery, should that come to the game. I think the biggest reward though should be completion of the raid itself. If you look at games like World of Warcraft, RuneScape, MMOs that are really focused on their PvE experience, completing raids is seen as a goal in itself, not necessarily just getting the rewards from it, and I think that's something that the Conan Exiles devs could learn from and implement into Conan. In my opinion, Conan is lacking that really hard endgame content that should be the shining star in PvE gameplay's crown. The combat system in Conan is great, for the most part. It's very fluid and skill-based, requiring you to learn dodges, movesets and timing to truly master your weapon of choice. But I do think an endgame PvE experience is truly what's needed. It'll give the game a bit more meat towards the higher levels, and it will give people a reason to carry on playing. So that's what I'd like to see, but what do you think Update 3.0 will contain? None of us will know for sure for a while. This is just my ideas of what I would like to see or what I think the update could have in store. I think we've definitely got a few more updates to come until we begin to hear some maybe slight rumblings or hints of what 3.0 will contain, but I am very excited to see what Funcom put forward for an update that they are clearly planning big things for. If you like the channel and would like to see more content in the future, There are links in the description to my Twitter, Twitch, Discord, NordVPN discount, Host Havoc affiliate link, and my Patreon. Or, of course, you can simply just leave a like and subscribe. Any of those are greatly appreciated. If you do choose to become a patron, you'll get sneak peeks of future videos, special roles in the Coffee Cult Discord, full-size blueprint downloads, your name at the end of every video, and finally, a brand new edition for the $5 and above tiers, custom-made Conan Exiles wallpapers in both 1080p and 4K resolutions, with patrons at the $20 tier being able to request custom designs. As usual, a massive thanks to our patrons Sadialot, Randar, Connor, Ivy, Velma, Torn, Meryl224, Rashad, and Eagle Rose. If you're new here, I upload every Wednesday and Sunday, so I hope to see you then. As always, take care, and I'll see you soon.